A group of more than 24 early childhood education organizations and out-of-school programs have formed a new coalition called Put Mass Kids First. Its primary goal is to help shape public policy on this critical part of the state's education system. The launching comes amid heightened attention to the state's commitment to early education. To tell us more about the coalition, we have invited its spokesperson, Marie St. Fleur. She is also president and CEO of the Bessie Tart Wilson Initiative for Children, whose mission is to drive system changes in early education for greater access and equality for children in low-income households. Welcome to Urban Update. Welcome back to Urban Update, Marie St. Fleur. Thanks for coming in. And start out, what is the mission of Put Mass Kids First?
Put Mass Kids First Coalition wants to make certain that we can increase quality early education and care for children, particularly all children, but particularly children living in poverty. And it's not just early education, it's a coalition of early education and care providers as well as out-of-school time. What we're pulling attention to is the clear fact that we now know, based upon all the research, all the brain science, that it is necessary that we start earlier with our children. And so this coalition is looking at birth through 12. And so how do we support children who are in early education and care settings, and how do we support children and as they come out of the school setting for after-school programs for enrichment, remediation, and as well as recreation, because a lot of children, that is where they get the opportunity to shine and to get the energy and motivation to get their academics done.
Mm-hmm. Now, what organizations make up this coalition? I know there are many. And how did it come to be?
Well, for the organizations, some of in terms of the larger organizations, the Alliance of YMCAs of Massachusetts, MADCA is a huge organization as well. You have Catholic Charities of Greater Boston, Mass Association of After-School Partnerships, Head Start across Massachusetts. And I can go on. So really it is provider organizations from across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who have come together with a specific desire to increase quality early education and out-of-school time in Massachusetts, and to really push for investment, because we really have experienced a decline in investment in those areas.
Okay. Now, talk to me about the research, what the research says about the importance of the role of early education.
So you know what, there's some wonderful work that's been done in a lot of places, but if you go online and you look at what the brain science work that's been done over at Harvard, the Center for Developing Child, and you look at the work that's been done on the brain science there, it tells us that from birth, children are absolutely learning, and that the formation of their brains, really the need to really engage children, to help them develop cognitively, that starts really at birth. And that the more that we delay that, the children then become behind. And so what we're trying to figure out is ways, particularly for poor kids, kids who are living in poverty across this Commonwealth, to be able to get in programs that are developmentally appropriate to actually get them stimulated, to help with their social and emotional development, to help them learn with tools and games, really grasp some methodology in order for them to show up in pre-K, because they start learning. There's a lot of conversation about pre-K, but before they get to pre-K, there's a lot of work that's got to be done for them, so they show up at pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade ready to learn.
Okay. Now, one quote that you've made is that you say that our level of commitment to children has swerved in the wrong direction at the wrong time. What do you mean by that?
Well, as the brain science has clearly shown that it's important to start earlier, we've now sort of taken a look at one end of this continuum, and it's an important end, UPK, and say that that's where we're going to focus on investment. And what we're suggesting is that we need to look at the birth through 5, birth through 12 continuum and start earlier, because the brain science demands that. It's not guessing anymore. And so at that same time as that science has evolved over the past 10 to 12 years, in Massachusetts, the largest percentage of investment comes from the federal government. right? And Massachusetts then put a match, and then in order to bring those dollars in. But our own share of investment as a state to our youngest learners have been shrinking. So I think it's time for us to really put our money where our mouth is. And I know it's tough fiscal times, but at least begin to lay the foundation so that when we come out of this, that we're coming out investing in quality programs. And in order to do that, we need to stabilize the programs that currently exist.
I was going to say, what does the landscape look like for both local and federal funding? You paint kind of a bleak picture.
I think it's a tough, everyone, if we listen to what's being said up on Beacon Hill, it is a tough time. But we also know that that is when we define ourselves in terms of what investment, and very difficult time is when we make clear choices about what our priorities are. I think that the last time we had a significant increase in early ed, we were in tough shape then too. But we decided then that expanding kindergarten was an important investment, and I think it's paid off. I think this is the very time now that we should be focused on laying down the foundation for us to invest, because currently what's happening is that we're losing some of our best skilled workers because they can't afford to stay in early ed. And so we're losing them. We're training ground for the public school system. And so if you're paying someone $21,000 to $25,000 a year, you want them to get a college degree, you want them to have skill sets in early development. Once they get those skill sets, if they have an opportunity to get paid $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 someplace else, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go there. And we're not saying to go that far, but we're saying at least give people a living wage.
Now, what can the viewers do to make sure that the funding for these items are not overlooked?
I think that people say that they believe in early education and care. I think they need to really now own up to it, because early education and care system is the anchor for all other industries in Massachusetts. Now, anybody who had a child who had to stay home this week because of a snowstorm understand how difficult it is to work. And so they need to now, understanding that, they need to then support the educators that are in the classrooms across this state in early education and care programs and after-school programs, and let their legislators know that this is a necessary investment for families as well as for our economy. So, and go on our website, putmasskidsfirst.org, and we can provide you much more information.
Now, Marie, you've been a public elected official. Now you're back in the nonprofit world. Tell us a little bit more about your organization.
Well, I'm having great fun with the Bessie Todd Wilson Initiative for Children. As you indicated, it is focused on enhancing quality and access in early ed. And what we do is grassroots research that really tries to drive the system to do better for children. So, for example, one of our first research projects that we involved was around vouchers, and we expanded vouchers, making certain that we could stabilize for all children living in poverty, to make certain that they can have at least some assurance that they can have their subsidy for at least a year versus every 6 months, which was the practice. And we work at the system. We look at what needs to be done with the system. We created a career ladder that's been adopted by the state. We'd love for them to fund it in order to make certain that we keep our best workforce in place.
And finally, Marie, I guess wrap things up. What is the one idea that you'd like people to take away from this concept, the importance of early education?
Bottom line is, our kids need a smart start. And in order for them to get that smart start, they need to start at birth. And in order for them to be able to get all that support, they need a skilled, well-trained educator in the classroom, just as you would need them in a K-12 experience. You need that skilled person in that classroom to give our children the smart start they deserve. Marie
St. Fleur, thanks for coming in and working to put Mass Kids first.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
When we come back, mobilizing men and boys in making a promise to be part of the solution in ending violence against women. More info coming up right here on An Update.